Hello, this is Michael. Welcome to Tarot by the Tree. This is lesson 4. In lesson 1, we took a look at the tarot cards, and we knew that they're basically a set of playing cards with 22 additional cards with special meanings. Lesson 2 was a look at what is the Tree of Life, and we learned that that is a representation of the belief system and the school of thought called Kabbalah. In lesson 3, we took the first journey through the Tree of Life, and we're going to recap with that now. And the point of lesson 4 is we're going to take the second journey, and this is through the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. In the Bible, there were these two trees. You were allowed to approach one, but not the other. This is the part where all the pieces of the puzzles fall together. We're going to look how the secret message, the key to this system, was remembered, and then we're going to express it. You'll see how all the Major Arcana, how 22 cards perfectly lie to reveal the different aspects of the Tree of Life. In ancient Kabbalah, it was thought that you shouldn't learn these things until you were at least 40 years of age. The reason is, as we go through the first tree, the Tree of Life, we see the way the Tree of Life is constructed, and we understand what each sephira means. In the second tree, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we see these same sephira, but we see them expressed in ways that might be seen in the world, sometimes as the extremes of good and the extremes of evil. This is the key. And maybe people were taught this, maybe they drew it in the sand, maybe they just sketched it and then burned the paper. But this key shows you the two trees of life and a balance. This balance represents justice, which is the 11th card of the tarot deck. The first tree of life is numbers 1 to 10. 11 card is the hinge pin, and 12 to 21 will be the second tree, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We'll start with the first tree, the Tree of Life, and let's just lay the cards and see how they describe this tree. We have the Fool, whose journey will be later shown moving from the bottom dark world of earth up to the top of creation. But for now, let's go in the order that the sephira suggests and the cards also suggest. We start with the Magician, all things possible, the wild energy and the beginning of opposites, the primordial mother who creates the next pair of the benevolent king, and the severe teacher, the middle realm of beauty, imagination and the strength of intellect, the flicker of light that beckons us to the higher worlds, and the Wheel of Fortune, which is where we are subject to forces greater than ourselves. Hanging over this tree, we have the scales. That's justice. Now we will look at the second tree and how the cards describe that. This is the same Tree of Life. We have Kether at the top. We have the wild energy of Chokmah, Bina the supernal mother, coming down to the benevolent king and the strict teacher, the world of beauty, imagination, intellect, the lens of perception, and finally our world. We have gone through the Tree of Life and we have seen how everything works. Now we carry on. The next card we see, which would be like the Magician. This is Kether. This is the highest expression of power. It's the Hangman. We see about his head the glow of wisdom, but because of his posture, we see it's not recognized. That symbolizes that great power, the beginnings of evolution may not be seen as that in their own time. Moving across now, what was the high priestess, the beginning of the differentiation, the beginning of wild energy concentrating itself into life, we have death. It's not the opposite of life. One of the lessons in this is that life and death are part of a continuum, part of a circle. You can't have one without the other. We're moving across now to the supernal mother, and we see the essence of her in temperance. Temperance is the idea of being able to merge two things, create a synergy, and come out with something unique, totally dissimilar. It is the beginning of life from non-life. We would move now across to what used to be the benevolent king, but it's turned into the devil. The lesson in that is that all forms of absolute authority will always tend to change because of worship. They will tend to become masters, and what were their peers and their practitioners become their servants, if not their slaves. Moving across now, we come to the teacher. This would be great wisdom, great learning, the secrets of the ages, has turned into the tower. The suggestion here is that bodies of knowledge, whether universities or churches or institutions, eventually reach their own ceiling, and you can't progress beyond it. Eventually, with any systemized study, any institution, you will have to break out of it. It will collapse under its own structure. It's not the final answer. We move into the realm now that was beauty and love, and we see the star. She's naked, she's giving her gifts to water and land freely without judgment. And we see that in the tree of life, in our early stages, we see love as what you're receiving from someone else, from something else. In this higher form, in the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we see the ultimate good of love is giving. It's not receiving. We move now down to imagination, where the chariot driver could control his crazy thoughts and his rational thoughts, and that's changed now. The two beasts have gone in their separate ways, and this is now a card of suspicion and perhaps mental illness. It's an instability because he can no longer control the diverse parts of his life, and they have taken over. We move across now to strength, which we saw in this case not a brutal kind of overpowering strength, but a very easy, controlling, non-demonstrative strength. That card has turned into the sun. And it's very interesting. If you read Blake's Songs of Innocence, you'll read about the tiger. And it's strange to think of the tiger as innocent, but in a sense, because of his non-fear and his great strength, he doesn't have to be worried. He doesn't have to go into covert modes. There's an innocence with that kind of power, and that's what this card suggests. We move now down into the hermit, which was thought to have been a glimmer of light, a beckoning, perhaps just to you, and we find out that now it's revealed as judgment. What you thought was just a whisper calling you, turns out that it was a trumpet awakening many people. You were part of the crowd, you just didn't know it at the time. Finally, the wheel of fortune, which was our beginning in our own world, has turned into the world. And you'll see now you are protected by a force field of your own learning. And the parts of this world, instead of being winged and imaginative, are now the way they are revealed on earth. There's a wisdom in this. There's also a caution. And the caution is death is part of life. Great authority becomes corrupt. great institutionalized learning has a built-in ceiling that will limit you in the end. Love is not receiving, it's giving. These two trees give you a knowledge of the single tree of life, but you're seeing it now in two dimensions, the way it perhaps should be and the way it could be, depending on the different circumstances we find in our own world. So in Lesson 4, we see the two sides of the trees, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We see how the cards perfectly align with those two trees and explain in depth what the tree of life really is. In the next lesson, Lesson 5, we're going to look at the Fool's Journey. We're going to make this a little more understandable and a little more pertaining to our lives on earth. So we're going to tell a story of the Fool's movement through these two trees, through the first one in his younger life and through the second one in his later life. Thanks, see you then.